I have the great pleasure of introducing our speaker this morning. Gary Clark, a dedicated resident of Chipley, Florida, has been deeply involved in his local community and the First Free Will Baptist Church for pretty much his whole life. Gary was led to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ by Frida Toole, his 5th grade Sunday school teacher. Gary and his wife Stacy will be married for 32 years this October. And they have 2 grown children, Emily and her husband Joshua and James Wesley. With a strong faith foundation and a passion for teaching God's Word, Gary has positively impacted many lives through his 28 years of Sunday school teaching and leadership as an ordained deacon for over 25 years. Gary's diverse background includes business development, ownership, a BS in business administration. He has actively contributed to various community organizations, serving as an elected official of the Washington County School Board for 12 years, Chipola College Board of Trustees for 16 years, and my favorite, the chairman or the Northwest Florida Friends of the NRA for 23 years, just to name a few. Gary's entrepreneurial spirit has led to several successful businesses that continue to contribute to his family's well-being and the preservation of many people and properties in the Chipley area. For the past 7 years, Gary has been dedicated to serving the state of Florida as the commissioner of the Florida Public Service Commission, bringing his leadership and expertise to benefit not only his local hometown, our local Free Will Baptist Church, but all the people of the great state of Florida. Gary Clark is truly one of my favorite Bible teachers, and I'm blessed to know him as my friend. Brother Gary.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, Brother John. Good morning. It is a privilege to be here with you this morning and to be given this opportunity. I would like to take a minute to just thank Brother John for not only the introduction, but for encouraging me to be here this morning and to be a part of this. And thank you, Dr. Moody, for the invitation to be here as well. And I want to acknowledge another very special friend in the audience, Brother David Williford. David, your encouragement has meant the world to me. You just don't know what a mentor you have been over the years. And I greatly do appreciate you. Well, I feel a little bit like the mule that showed up to run in the Kentucky Derby. I'm not sure how I got here, but I'm honored to be among such great company. I'm probably the only guy that you're going to hear from this week that didn't graduate from Welch College, or the only guy that probably doesn't have a theology degree that's on this stage today, a fact that's going to be quite evident in the next 30 minutes. But I do and beg your indulgence. I'm not a preacher. I was not called to preach, but I did make a promise to God many years ago that I would walk where He leads me. So if this doesn't live up to your expectations, you blame one of these 3 guys or God. They invited me and He got me here, so it's up to them. I want to say a very special thank you to all of those who have reached out over the past couple of weeks, those who have called and encouraged me, who have called and asked how they could pray for me. I am grateful for your prayers this week. Someone said, well, how can I pray for you, Brother Gary? I said, there's 3 ways. Fervently, frequently, and fanatically. It is that plus the grace of God, I think, that's probably going to get me through this morning. I also want to give a big shout out this morning to my Sunday school class back at the Chipley Free Will Baptist Church. They're supposed to be there watching live this morning. If someone will wake up Brother James, please, and tell him we're time to get started, it'd be helpful. We used to say when we began church that if you had your Bibles, take them and turn to Numbers chapter 14. Today we've had to make some changes to that. Today we say open your preferred reading device to Numbers chapter 14. This day of electronics and social media, everything that is in society now comes with a hashtag. Everything has its own hashtag. And I was thinking about, as I read the scripture and began to prepare this week, I was thinking about Moses. And suppose Moses had his own Facebook page. Suppose Moses had charted the account of the children of Israel's journeys with a hashtag. As I got to Numbers chapter 14 this week, I thought that Moses might have noted this particular chapter with a couple of interesting hashtags. Hashtag, woes in the wilderness. Hashtag, whiny babies. Or hashtag, maybe bad choices. I'm sure we could probably come up with a lot more, but I can only imagine the frustration that must have been running through Moses' mind as he began to see his people begin to rebel against the God that had brought them to the edge of the promised land. This morning, we're going to see what happens when God gets tired of the whining. Now, my father was from the old school. He was from that spare the rod and spoil the child kind of old school. And let's just say he believed in it really, really, really strongly. But my father had a saying that I'm sure most of you can finish it when I begin it, when it came to whining and complaining. He would say, if you don't stop whining, I'm going to give you something to whine about. I think that maybe that particular old saying, that may have come from the book of Numbers, chapter 14. A few months ago, my wife Stacy and I took a little road trip. We went up to visit Zion National Park, one of our bucket list items. If that's not on your bucket list, you should certainly put it on there. And against my wishes and my better judgment, somehow she was able to convince me to hike the trail to a place that's called Angel's Landing. Now, in case you have not noticed, this is not the body of a hiker. This is more the body of a where are we going to eat lunch at today. But after a couple of hours of huffing and puffing, we finally made it up the trail and we came to a fork road where there was a sign that said Angel's Landing this way. Now, if you know anything about hiking, which I do not, this is called a decision point. This is a turning point. Do we turn around and go back? Or do we continue the journey to discover the beauty of nature that God created? And do we get to see the reward that is going to be there based on this difficult climb that we are about to make? Well, you know what we did. That's right, we turned around and went straight back down that mountain with God's blessings. Now, I'm sure you're thinking this morning, what does this have to do with choosing faith over fear? It's not. But I am 100% confident of one thing. God did not call me to Angel Landing that day. I took one look at the sign that stood in front of me that said loose rocks, narrow trails, no handrails, enter at your own risk, and that's all the sign that I needed. Listen to me this morning. Every day in our lives, we come to these kinds of decision points. Some are critical. Some are trivial. Some are important. And some have eternal consequences. My decision point that day was trivial. I was not prepared. I was certainly not in shape to climb that mountain. In Numbers chapter 14, the children of Israel are at a decision point in their journey to a place that God has called them to. And they are facing one of the most important decisions that they are ever going to make. Do we put our trust in God? Do we follow God's plans for our lives? Do we take the land that He has promised and live happily ever after? Or do we let our fears outweigh the promises that God has made to us? It's from this point this morning that I propose this question to you. Are you willing to trust God when all of the signs around you say it's not going to be easy? It may get difficult. This is not going to work. This could be dangerous. Are you going to listen to those signs when God has told you, here is where I want you to be? Now let me give a quick context this morning for today's lesson. And yes, I promise we will get to it. God had told Moses back in Numbers chapter 13 to send out 12 spies. Send one spy from each of the tribes. We're going to send them into the promised land. We want them to scout around. We want them to look around, see what's there, come back, give us a report so that we know and that we understand what they're facing. Go scout out the promised land. And the spies did so. They were gone for about 40 days. Now that's an important number. Just keep that in the back of your mind. We're going to see that number come up again. And when the spies returned after their 40 days of scouting out the land of Canaan, they came back and they gave a report to Moses and to Aaron and to the leadership of the nation of Israel. And I could just imagine being there as that report was given when the spies began with, Moses, this don't look good. The cities that we saw, they were well fortified. The people that we saw, the country that we saw, they were powerful. Moses, they even have giants in this land. Moses, they put up no trespassing signs. Every conceivable reason that you can think of was proposed by these spies why they should not go in to conquer the land. But there were two of the 12. There were two of the 12 that were different. They offered a different perspective. Now keep this in mind. Their observation was no different than the other 10 spies, but their conclusion was vastly different. You see, Joshua and Caleb stepped up that day. They stepped up and they said, Moses, that's true, but you know what? Our God's got this. Our God's got this. When you look at the troubles that this world throws at us on a daily basis, from the perspectives of the world, it looks bad. But when you compare them to the greatness of the God that we serve, it's nothing. I'm so impressed. Joshua and Caleb that day did not hesitate to show the world how big their God was. So when we hit chapter 14, the word is out. The word is already on the streets, and you can just imagine the different versions of what these spies had reported to Moses and Aaron and to the leadership. You can just imagine how this report is spreading throughout the entire land. You can also imagine how distorted it has been. Now, I'm sure that no one in this room understands and knows how gossip works. So I'm going to explain it to you. The more times that a story is repeated, the more it gets exaggerated. And I am sure by the time Numbers chapter 14 opens up that the giants that they saw in that land that were 10 feet tall have now grown to 14 feet tall. The Amalekites had probably purchased M1 tanks from the Canaanites by the time that this story is getting throughout the entire nation. But now it's decision time. Are you going to choose your path based on man's perspective? Or are you willing to trust the God that brought you here? Point number one this morning. Unbelief leads to rebellion. If you have your Bibles, we're going to read the first 10 verses of Numbers chapter 14. And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried. And the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron. And the whole congregation said unto them, Would God that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would God that we had died in this wilderness? And wherefore hath the Lord brought us unto this land, to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be prey? Were it not better for us to return to Egypt? Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. I'm sorry, I skipped verse 4. And they said to one another, Let us make a captain and let us return into Egypt. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, which were of them that searched the land, rent their clothes. And they spake unto all the company of the children of Israel, saying, The land which we passed through to search it, it's an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delight in us, then he will bring us into this land. He will give it to us, a land that floweth with milk and honey. Only rebel not ye against the Lord, neither fear ye the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their defense is departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Fear them not. But all the congregation bathed them with stones, and the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle of the congregation before all the children of Israel. Wow, that sounds like the minutes of a public comment period at a city council meeting, if you ask me. Oh, if we had only died in Egypt. Oh, if we had only died out in the wilderness. Oh, the complaining and the moaning and the groaning and the whining is just now beginning. There's a great lesson here for us. Be careful what you wish for. Saying things even in jest may have serious consequences. When your tone and your attitude imply that you might be better off in another scenario, be careful. God may just give you that opportunity. There's no question the Israelites were facing a difficult decision. The circumstances look bad. Humanly speaking, they're outgunned. But notice this, they aren't helping themselves by running around and whining about it, are they? You know, misery loves company, doesn't it? And I think that what they're doing, they're running around, they're making themselves miserable. Everyone seems really quick here to give an opinion or an assessment of the situation based on circumstances that they didn't see for themselves, based on secondhand information that they received. The doubters are no doubt numerous. So it's a tough place to be. How do you make a good decision when the information that stands before you looks so dire? Folks, it's easy to get other folks' opinion these days, isn't it? Unfortunately, so many times those opinions are based on human experiences. They're looked at through human eyes. They've been evaluated by human abilities. This is a recipe for failure. I promise you, if you want to miss out on the blessings that God has in store for you, listen to your doubters. Don't lift a finger to seek God's guidance. The last thing you should ever do is seek godly counsel, right? You can absolutely guarantee you will fail. Doubt leads to fear. Fear leads to self-reliance. And self-reliance is rebellion against God. Point number 2. God responds to rebellion with the perfect balance of forgiveness and justice. Verses 11 through 20. And the Lord said to Moses, How long will this people provoke me? How long will it be ere they believe me? For all the signs which I have showed among them, I will smite them with pestilence. I will disinherit them, and will make of thee a greater nation and mightier than they. And Moses said unto the Lord, Then the Egyptians shall hear it. For thou broughtest up thy people in thy might from among them. And they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land, for they have heard that thou art Lord among his people. That thou, Lord, art seen face to face, and that thy cloud standeth over them, and that thou goest before them by daytime in a pillar of cloud, and a pillar of fire by night. Now if you shall kill all these people as one man, when the nations which have heard of thy fame of thee will speak, saying, Because the Lord was not able to bring this people into the land which he swore unto them, therefore he hath slain them in the wilderness. And now I beseech thee, let the power of my Lord be great, according as thou hast spoken, saying, the Lord is long-suffering and of great mercy, forgiving iniquity and transgression, and by no means clearing the iniquity of the fathers upon the children into the third and fourth generation. Pardon, I beseech thee, the iniquity of this people according unto the greatness of thy mercy, and as thou hast forgiven this people from Egypt even until now. And the Lord said, I have pardoned according to thy will. Aren't we glad we don't get from God what we deserve? Here God is ready to fulfill his promise to the nation of Israel. He's ready to lead them into a land that he had promised them some 600 years earlier. And despite all of the miracles that they have seen, despite all of the blessings that they have enjoyed, despite the provisions that God has made for them, he's fed them, he's watered them, he's clothed them. Despite everything that God has done for them, their faith is shaken. All because 10 men didn't have the courage to stand up and say, they may be big, but our God is bigger. And it's so bad that now they even propose, we want to go back to Egypt. We want a new leader. Let's vote. Let's get a new leader. I've got an even better idea. Let's kill the two guys that thought we ought to do this. And that's when we see God step in. In his righteous anger, God contemplates his judgment. Would he have been 100% justified that day to just wipe them off the map? Sadly, yes. But I am so grateful this morning that our God is also a God of mercy. And it is here where we get to see the most amazing and extraordinary aspect of God's character. I love this part. God's mercy comes when Moses intercedes on behalf of his people, asking God to reconsider his judgment. Moses here makes a real request of God. Notice this. He didn't ask God to spare the people because they deserved it. He didn't brag about all the good things they had done. He didn't try to change God's mind based on the merits of the people. He asked for God's mercy, for God's glory. Moses said to God, consider your reputation among the nations. God, don't let them be able to say that you were not able to deliver your people. Wow, I'm impressed. I wouldn't have thought of that angle. But nonetheless, we are witness to the power of intercession from the heart of a leader that is committed to his people. Oh, that our leaders in this great country of ours would stop and learn from this. We are reminded here that true leadership involves standing in the gap, advocating for others, advocating for your people. Note this, even when they're wrong, even when they're wrong. We also see God's response here. He answers Moses' prayer. He forgives the people, demonstrating that his mercy always triumphs over judgment. Point number 3 this morning. Sin and rebellion, even when forgiven, still has consequences. Verses 21 through 38. But as truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord. because all those men which have seen my glory and my miracles, which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have tempted me now these 10 times, and have not hearkened to my voice, surely they shall not see the land which I swear to their fathers, neither shall any of them that provoked me see it. But my servant Caleb, because he had another spirit with him, and hath followed me fully, him will I bring into the land whereinto he went, and his seed shall possess it. Now the Amalekites and the Canaanites dwelt in the valley. Tomorrow turn you and get you into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. And the Lord spoke unto Moses and to Aaron, saying, How long shall I bear with this evil congregation which murmur against me? I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel, which they murmur against me. Say unto them, As truly as I live, saith the Lord, as you have spoken in mine ears, so will I do to you. Your carcasses shall fall in the wilderness, and all numbered of you according to your whole number, from 20 years old and upward, which you have murmured against me. Doubtless you shall come into the land, concerning which I swear to make you dwell therein, save Caleb the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua the son of Nun. But your little ones, which you said should be prey, them I will bring in, and they shall know the land which you have despised. But as for you, your carcasses, they shall fall in the wilderness. And your children shall wander in the wilderness 40 years, and bear your whoredoms until your carcasses be wasted in the wilderness. After the number of days in which you have searched the land, even 40 days, every day for a year shall ye bear your iniquities. Even 40 years, and ye shall know my breach of promise. If the Lord have said, I will surely do it unto all this evil congregation that are gathered together against me in this wilderness, they shall be consumed, and there they shall die. And the men which Moses sent to search the land who returned, and made all the congregation to murmur against them by bringing up a slander upon the land. Even those men that did bring up the evil report upon the land died by the plague before the Lord. But Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, which were of the men that went to search the land, lived still. What a great disappointment for the nation of Israel. Disappointment probably isn't even the right word. What a great tragedy. We were so close. We were sitting on the edge. We almost made it in. Folks, God's promises aren't blank checks. They almost always come with a condition. The condition of faith and obedience. When the nation of Israel refuses to trust him, the result is a profound shift in their destiny. Because you doubted me, because you do not trust me, you will not enter the promised land. How many of God's blessings have we missed over the course of our lives because of our own disobedience? For the next 40 years, the children are condemned to wander in the desert until only those that were 20 years younger remained. An entire generation had to pay for the failure of their leaders. But even in his judgment, even in his justice, God still provides for the nation. That group that would eventually inherit the promised land, that group that was 20 years of age and under, you see, that's a symbol of God's faithfulness. That's a symbol of God's promises. Today, I encourage each person that's here to examine your heart. Are there areas of your life that need to be addressed? Are you making choices that are going to have consequences for you and for the ones that you love? Today we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to recommit ourselves to a life of faithfulness, to a life of trust. We have to understand our actions matter. Our actions matter. Our choices matter. And they don't just matter for us. They matter for our families. They matter for our church. They matter for our community. They matter for our nation. That's never been more evident. You see, we can be a generation that embraces God's promises and leads others toward faithfulness. We can build a legacy that honors and blesses future generations to come. All we have to do is choose faith over fear.